You wake up. You stretch. You reach for your phone without thinking. Same routine. Same ceiling. Same version of you that showed up yesterday. But here's the thing. That version of you, the one reading this right now, almost didn't exist. Not in a dramatic movie trailer sense. In a deeply, quietly biological sense. Because before you arrived, there were others. Fully conscious. Fully feeling. Fully human. Just not your kind of human. And they are completely gone. What your brain inherited from their disappearance is stranger thing evolution textbooks will tell you. Let's establish something first. When we say vanished, we don't mean extinction in the dinosaur sense. No asteroid. No single catastrophic day. We mean a slow, quiet disappearance. A species that walked, hunted, grieved, and remembered. And then one morning, simply wasn't there anymore. We're talking about the Neanderthals, and the Denisovans, and Homo heidelbergensis, and at least 4 other human species whose names we haven't even agreed on yet. Here's what makes this genuinely unsettling. These weren't primitive creatures stumbling through darkness. They had fire. They buried their dead. Some of them placed flowers on those graves. They looked at the same night sky you look at, and they felt something about it. We just don't know what. And that gap in knowledge, that silence where their inner world used to be, is exactly what this video is about. Think about that for 1 second. We share 99.7% of our DNA with a species that no longer exists. That's not a science fact. That's an existential event. Forget everything the word caveman ever made you picture. That image is wrong. Cartoonishly, embarrassingly wrong. The world Neanderthals inhabited was not primitive. It was brutal, and it demanded something from them that most modern humans will never be asked to produce. Total, unrelenting physical competence. The average Neanderthal male was shorter than you, maybe 5'5", but the bone density in their arms was comparable to what modern biomechanists find in professional rodeo riders. Let that sit for a moment. Their skeletons carry healed fractures, ribs, collarbones, skulls, in patterns nearly identical to modern trauma surgeons see in people who have been trampled by large animals. This wasn't occasional. This was standard. They didn't hunt from a distance with bows. Their weapons were thrusting spears, which means to kill something, they had to be close enough to feel its breath. You stress about inbox notifications. They stressed about whether the woolly rhinoceros they were currently holding a spear against was going to gore them before it died. Different eras, wildly different stakes. And yet, they survived like this for over 300,000 years. 300,000 years. To put that in scale, modern humans as a civilization have existed for roughly 12,000 years. They outlasted everything we have ever built by a factor of 25. And then, they were gone. Let's do something unusual here. Let's actually try to be one of them for a moment. Not as a thought experiment novelty, as a serious attempt to understand what it meant to carry a conscious, feeling brain in a world with absolutely zero margin for psychological fragility. You wake up, but not to an alarm. You wake up because something in your nervous system decided the quality of silence outside had shifted. Your threat detection system, the same one that still fires in you when you hear a floorboard creak at 3 a.m., was their primary operating mode. Not an occasional visitor. The default setting. Food was not guaranteed. Warmth was not guaranteed. Every single morning started with an unspoken biological audit. Are we intact? Are we safe? Do we have enough? Imagine if the first cognitive process your brain ran every morning wasn't check notifications, but instead a full threat inventory of your immediate physical environment. Neanderthal children grew up with that as their morning routine, and neurologically, their brains were wired to handle it without breaking down. Here's what researchers have reconstructed from skeletal evidence, cave site archaeology, and comparative primate behavior analysis. Pause. Neanderthals likely lived in groups of 10 to 30 individuals. No more. The environment couldn't support larger bands, which means every person in that group was irreplaceable. Not emotionally irreplaceable in a sentimental sense. Functionally irreplaceable. If your group lost its best napper, the person who knew how to fracture flint into usable blades, your entire group's survival odds dropped measurably. If you lost your most experienced elder, the person whose memory held 40 years of regional knowledge about water sources, predator migration, and plant toxicity, you lost a living library with no backup copy. And we know they cared about their elderly. We have skeletal evidence of Neanderthals who survived into old age with severe physical disabilities. Arthritis so advanced they couldn't hunt, toothlessness that would have made independent eating impossible. They were fed. They were kept warm. Someone chose to carry them forward when it would have been easier not to. Right now, your body is sitting in near total safety, climate controlled, no predators, no starvation threat. And yet some part of your nervous system still randomly generates low-level anxiety with no clear source. That's not a malfunction. That's inherited architecture from exactly this world. This is where it gets genuinely strange. Because for a long time, the scientific consensus was that Neanderthals were cognitively inferior, reactive, imitative, not truly thinking, just responding. That consensus has been almost completely dismantled. In caves across Spain and France, archaeologists have found cave art that predates the arrival of modern Homo sapiens in Europe by tens of thousands of years, which means Neanderthals made it. Abstract symbols, deliberate pigment application, organized geometric markings that serve no immediate survival function whatsoever. That's not instinct. That's symbolism. That's a mind reaching beyond its immediate physical needs to express something it can't eat, wear, or use as a weapon. We have been calling them primitive for about 200 years. And it turns out they were making abstract art while our ancestors were still figuring out how to cross into Europe. The scientific humility required to update that assumption took decades. Make of that what you will. And here's where the story pivots into something deeply personal to you. Because modern humans and Neanderthals didn't just coexist. They interacted, traded, almost certainly communicated across whatever language barrier existed. And they reproduced together. If you are of non-African descent, between 1% and 4% of your DNA is Neanderthal. Not metaphorically, literally. Specific Neanderthal gene variants have been identified in modern human populations that influence immune system response, skin and hair adaptation to cold climates, and certain pain sensitivity thresholds. Some researchers now believe certain modern anxiety responses, that specific sense of hypervigilance in new or unfamiliar environments, may carry Neanderthal genetic signatures. Think about what that means. That nervousness you feel walking into a room full of strangers. That background hum of alertness in unfamiliar spaces. That might not be a modern neurosis. That might be a completely vanished species still sending signals through your body. And then, approximately 40,000 years ago, they started disappearing. Not all at once. In pockets. A group here. A population there. Like lights going out in a building, floor by floor, until the whole structure was dark. We don't have a clean answer for why. And that absence of a clean answer is itself the most honest thing science can offer here. What we have are contributing factors. Modern humans arrived in Europe with projectile weapons, bows, spear throwers, that allowed hunting from a distance. Neanderthals were still thrusting, still getting close, still absorbing the injuries that came with that proximity. Modern humans also appear to have operated in larger social networks, trade routes, information sharing across greater distances, a kind of distributed intelligence that allowed them to adapt faster than any single group could alone. Imagine being in a group of 20 people with 40 years of regional survival knowledge, and then a network of 500 people with constantly updated information starts operating in your territory. Not hostile necessarily, just more adaptive, more connected, faster to respond to environmental shifts. That asymmetry compounds over generations, and climate was shifting, cold periods intensifying, prey populations relocating. The environmental conditions that Neanderthal physiology had been specifically optimized for, the cold, the physical demands, the dense northern forests, were changing faster than their adaptation cycle could answer. The last confirmed Neanderthal fossil site is in southern Spain. a small population, pushed to the edge of a continent. Approximately 28,000 years ago, after 300,000 years. That was it. No dramatic final moment we can point to. No last stand encoded in stone. Just an absence, where there had been presence. Here is the part that should genuinely change how you think about yourself. They didn't just disappear. They dissolved into us. Their genes passed through thousands of generations of human bodies, silently influencing immune responses, metabolic thresholds, neurological defaults, all the way to the nervous system currently processing these words. When researchers isolated the specific Neanderthal genetic contributions that survived natural selection in modern humans, they found something remarkable. The traits that were kept were almost entirely practical. Cold weather skin adaptation. Specific immune pathway responses to pathogens that existed in Eurasian environments. Pain thresholds tuned for environments where physical endurance was survival currency. Evolution kept what worked and quietly archived the rest. Right now, somewhere in your genome, there is genetic material that passed through a Neanderthal body, through their childhood, through their hunts, through whatever they felt looking at that cave wall before they pressed their hand into the pigment and left a mark. You are, in the most literal biological sense, partly made of a species that the world considers completely gone. That handprint in the cave, the one that predates modern humans in Europe, the one made by a mind reaching towards something it couldn't name. Some version of that reaching is still happening in you. Every time you make something that doesn't need to exist, every time you sit with a feeling longer than survival requires, every time you look at a night sky and feel something you don't have the words for, that's not just you. The brain decided a long time ago that carrying pieces of a vanished species forward was a reasonable trade. What got passed down wasn't their extinction. It was their survival, their cold weather endurance, their immune memory, their particular quality of alertness in the dark. All of it folded quietly into you across 40,000 years of unbroken inheritance. And honestly, maybe that's for the best.